thanks once again, everyone, for joining me for these live studies. We missed the last 2 weeks. We had I had my own personal illness that I went through, sickness, and then we had the Thanksgiving break. And so I hope everyone's well rested. Those of you who are with me in the live class, thanks again for joining me during these live internet studies. This is an hour-long study broken up into two 30-minute segments. This is the first 30-minute segment, which is a study on Judaism versus Christianity. Are Judaism and Christianity incompatible with one another? We're not really kind of pitting the two religions against one another. We're working from a passage, let me pull it up on your screen here, taken from Matthew chapter 9, verses 14 through 17. Since we're at the very end of our study, I'm going to read the passage at this time once again in its entirety. Let me read it for you and then tell you why we're having this discussion in this particular study. This part of your Bible, if you're using the ESV like I am right now, because of the red letter edition, that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy the ESV over, say, NASB or something like that. Although I those are the two that I kind of go back and forth between. But ESV puts the words of Jesus in red, whereas the NASB, at least the online version that I have seen, doesn't do that. And so you'll see a lot of red on your screen. It labels it a question about fasting. And so there's an incident here. Let me read it for you, and then we'll tell you why the study is entitled what it is. Starting in verse 14, the verse reads, "Then the disciples of John came to him, saying, 'Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?' Verse 15, "And Jesus says to them, 'Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast.' Verse 16, "No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made." And then verse 17, "Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." And that's the end of the story. We can find this story in the other two Gospels. We don't find it in John, but it is found in Mark and Luke. And in Luke, we're given more details. In fact, there's a part of the parable, it's mentioned as a parable, that talks about no one, after drinking the old wine, desires new wine because he realizes that the old wine is the best or the better of the two choices. And so the reason we're having this discussion in this study is that these verses have been utilized by historic Christianity to introduce this idea of Jesus is replacing the old system of things, the old Judaism, the old religious lifestyle, the old commandment-keeping way of approaching God. He's replacing all of that system with a new system of the new law of Christ, the new life of faith in himself, the new way of not having to really focus on the letter of the law, but just allowing the Spirit to move you and to lead you and to guide you. And so the whole system has been given a name known as replacement theology. It goes by the name of supersessionism as well, or even some aspects of dispensationalism convey the same thought that I'm alluding to. And the idea is that there's an allegory that's supplied by later Christianity because Jesus didn't give us the explanation himself. The elements of the story are, however, that Jesus is questioned about why he and his disciples aren't doing something kind of basic to their day, which was Judaism had come to the idea of that fasting during weddings or something to that effect. And so he answers simply the question using the opportunity to plug himself into the motif of wedding. He says, if there's a wedding, then you don't really want to fast and mourn. You can do that when the wedding's over and when the bridegroom's gone, but right now, and then he plugs himself in. He says, "I'm the bridegroom and you're the bride, Israel, and there's a wedding that's taking place before your very eyes because I'm here. I'm the long-awaited Messiah," is what I'm trying to say, is Jesus, in Jesus' own words. And as the bridegroom, then you don't need to worry about mourning and fasting, right? Let's rejoice because I'm here. And so that's his kind of initial answer, and it's just kind of in-your-face common sense. There's no need to even insert anything about I'm coming to replace the old with the new and uprip the old system and anything about that in his initial answer. But it's when Yeshua supplies the additional details where he talks about if you're going to patch up a garment, you want to use the right type of patch. And if you're going to transfer wine into wineskins, you want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. It's then that Christianity supplies their allegorical understanding of, the old system is incompatible with the new way of doing things that Jesus is bringing to the scene. Because in the parables, he talks about some incompatibility issues between an old patch and a new garment, or a new patch and an old garment. And the old wine and new wineskins and things like that. And so Christianity sees this as opportunity to say, aha, see, Jesus is now telling us that the old and the new are incompatible. And of course, Judaism and the commandments have long since been a foil to be used by Christianity to demonstrate what is so wrong with the old way of doing things, and to introduce a kind of a contest between Old Testament and New Testament, or Old Covenant and New Covenant, or Law of Moses versus Law of Christ. And so that's where the discussion has been going in my commentary, which of course all of you who listen to my teachings on a regular basis know I disagree with that. Wholeheartedly, I disagree with the idea that Jesus was coming to bring something radically new in replacement of Judaism or the Law of Moses. What we did find, however, is that there's an opportunity to see that Jesus is actually just trying to explain that either A, use common sense when patching up clothes and transferring wine to wineskins, right? And when attending weddings, right? Use common sense, and that's a good explanation. I've heard that on the internet. I looked it up in commentaries, and that's a good way to explain the whole story.